actually describing this is just to describe what that preferred state would be. So, and just to be able to do that. So again, it might be agree on relative timeline. Is this something they need in 1 semester, 2 semesters, 3 semesters? So those broad kinds of agreements to make sure that it's a good fit with it. Okay? The other thing is to understand why it's important to your project partner, because that can make you in tune to those aspects you need to keep in mind when designing. So if you know why it's important, that will actually inform your design. So actually capturing that. Okay. Most of you probably have gotten to this point already in the semester or very close to it. And actually then the next phase that's very significant is specification development. Now this is a phase that tends to get overlooked or not enough focus is put on this. But if you do this well, the rest of the design will follow. So here again, well, for this one, as stated in the goal, is to understand what is needed by your community partner, not necessarily how you're going to do it. Because again, that's a tendency of beginning designers is to think, oh, they need this, and I'm just going to use this microprocessor or this laser or this whatever to achieve it without fully understanding what's needed. So if you invest in this, this is a really important phase. It's incredibly important. I can tell you, if you don't believe me, wait till your design review. And if you don't talk about your specifications, that's the first thing your industry design reviewers will ask you about. This is in critical way. It's critical to design. It's critical. Our corporate partners all understand that. So this is something that's absolutely important. So it starts at a pretty broad level, but at the end, you need to have measurable, specific specifications that you can measure whether or not your project is meeting those needs. So it's not even I need a lightweight communication device. You would need by the end of this to have very specific goals, specifications related to that. All right. There's a lot of things that you can do in looking at this, and we'll go through some of them. And again, the other thing that you're going to be doing is comparing to the benchmark products, what else is out there. It might be that you get to the end of specifications and you find that there's actually a commercial product that's affordable that meets your project partner's needs. Probably at this point, it might be the conversation with them of, do you want to just go ahead and buy that? Okay? If we don't necessarily want to be spending time in EPICS replicating what's commercially available. That's not the need we need to fill. We need to fill the one where there's not already a solution to that. So it might be that what the solutions out there are not affordable. That's often the case in education, and especially in special education. I know when my son, when we got a communication device, it was like $6,000 for a communication device. Really expensive. They're $10,000 now. So there's a tremendous need or opportunity to make things affordable. So maybe there is a commercial product, but it may not be affordable, and that's a reason why to do an EPICS project. So, okay. One of those things back here was to understand the context. So what do I mean by context? Why is it important? Yes?
The situation in which the product's going to be used.
The situation in which the product's going to be used. Why is that important? Yes?
Because if your product's not useful, then it doesn't work.
Right. If it's not useful, if you don't understand the situation, the environment that's going to use, then it's not going to provide as much value, for example. Anybody have any examples of context related to their project? Yes?
For an example, if you wanted to have a car and you wanted to run on something that wasn't fossil fuels, you might want to use ethanol in there, but then you have to put ethanol into your metal car engine. And that doesn't work so well. So the context of that, despite the fact that it's a good idea, doesn't work.
Right. So there's some technical, so talked about using alternative, but what might be some other issues related to context related to that? Using ethanol. What are some other implications of maybe using ethanol in a car besides the fact that it doesn't go well with that?
It affects like the oil economy.
Might affect the oil economy. What else might it affect?
Food production.
Food production, right. So understanding some of those broader issues are really important. So it can be as specific as, I didn't realize they were going to use this product in this room and we can actually get it through the door. Unfortunately, we've had an EPICS project that was the case. They didn't understand the environment, and so they created something that couldn't actually make it through the door, okay? Or not realizing that our adaptive PE teacher is carrying this device all over the 3 counties, or the county, to be able to know that what we design has to fit with her context, the way in which she operates. Or it could be a broader political issue. One of the other things that comes into play often, for example, are state standards. Anybody who's doing any work with an educational team, state standards or now national standards are actually really important in understanding. So those are the contexts in which, if you can align your project with this broader goal, it's going to be more effective for your community partner. What are some effective ways to learn? Yes?
Trial and error.
Trial and error. Yes? What are some other ways? Yes? Yes, actually ask them. What are some other good ways? Sometimes just spending time in the environment is actually a really important way. You will become aware of issues that you didn't even know to ask about if you can just spend time and observe. Did you have another?
There's like a lot of research journals on Google Scholar and stuff that go in depth about, like for example, we're working with Slack, so we're working with deaf kids.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of scientific research journals about educating deaf kids and deaf kids in the classroom.
Yes. So looking to like some scholarly journals on what might be evident strategies that have already been identified for that. So absolutely, very good. So some of the issues might be the social challenges that your community partner faces. So being aware of that, making sure you know what the mission is of your community partner so you can align with that. And are there other aspects related to your community partner that would impact the potential solution that you develop? Okay, as far as are there? Because often you're working with maybe a director of a facility or a teacher or a principal, but really understanding those other issues that might pertain to the clients of who your community partner serves. The other thing is being aware again of, are they governed by particular bodies? Are they subject to certain regulations, like FCC kind of regulations, educational guidelines, who's making those decisions? So being aware of these things can make sure that the product you're developing or process or whatever, what you're designing, will actually be effective for them. One thing you might complete if you were interested, so this was actually, they were looking at a problem that patients in rural areas have low access to high quality medical treatment. And so if you look at this example, they started to map out what were all the stakeholders involved. And some of them, of course, you would maybe think the doctor, other things as far as maybe transportation became an issue as a stakeholder in looking at that. So you may have various stakeholders involved, and it's important to understand their role within the design. There are some people that have to approve, and they don't necessarily need to be involved in the day-to-day, but they need your approval or they're funding it. You're going to involve them a certain way in the design. But maybe your direct users are the ones you need to actually incorporate their specific, you need to involve them on an ongoing basis throughout the design. So you can actually look at what might be different stakeholders. A map that they did was then look and see what were the expectations of each of those stakeholders, what impact did they have on the project, how they would respond to negative impact, and then what interest they had in it and the power that they have. So recognizing that all stakeholders may have different interests, different power levels, and being cognizant of that. And it also is possible that they have different opinions, and so how are you going to negotiate that, okay? But if you make a list of all your stakeholders, it's easier to navigate through that and making sure you have a strategy for engaging and meeting all the needs of the different stakeholders. Again, looking at that can help you figure out how to engage them and have a plan. So this is actually a strategy or something important, especially for project partner liaisons, but even design leads, when you think about keeping your stakeholders in mind with that. Okay. The other way to kind of, at this initial needs assessment, is to actually spend time with formal or informal interviews, observations that we talked about. How many of you are familiar with personas and scenarios? Okay. So you can develop personas and scenarios that can help represent a characteristic stakeholder involved and use that to help you evaluate the design from their perspective versus necessarily yours. Scenarios, again, are the before and after, and I'll show you an example of how we've done that. You can role play. Sometimes even just using an opportunity to see what a museum display might look like from a children's point of view is even just maybe getting down to the height of the typical user. On our old website, we actually had a picture of a museum exhibit that we did. I have lots of examples that I can draw from of when we didn't always take everything into mind, but they designed this display, and college-age students had developed this. And so basically, though, it wasn't the kids that the target for couldn't actually see the display. And the picture we had on the website was them getting really excited because they could see some little LEDs that were about this level of the display, where the target had been this way. So we had spent months, semesters and semesters developing this, only to find out that our target audience could not actually see the primary parts of the display we were developing. We could have easily figured that out had we just went to the level of the height and trying to see with this. You can do other more empathic modeling. If you're working with somebody who has arthritis, you can actually tape coins to your knuckles to see what it would be like not to have that flexibility. So are there ways to actually see what it might be like to interact with your device if you did that? And again, prototyping at every stage. There's documents on SharePoint to guide interviews, and then there's also the D-School website and IDEO. So more tools related to that. So personas are fictional characters that represent a typical stakeholder. they're typical or average, and you want to provide as much detail as possible related to that. So HERD is actually an ongoing project, but one of the ways in which this got started is that we identified primary stakeholders. We knew that there was a need out there, but we needed to define what that was. And so we identified primary and secondary stakeholders related to this. Then we wrote user profiles as far as to describe who might be a typical user, and talked about different aspects. So it really talked about how many work, what education. On the student, went into details, not only maybe that they had limited communication, but what were some other things that they really liked. Okay. Again, a more detailed user analysis that really kind of tells the story. So the other one was more of a bullet, but this actually then tells that other story and how she sees herself. So again, capturing some of those things that you were able to capture in some of your wallet exercises. What's important to this person beyond maybe some demographic aspect or physical thing that I want to describe. They also did one for the student, and again, talked about other things that the student would enjoy, which can inform your design. What they did, and because this was still, they were still trying to figure out exactly how it should operate, they came up with a scenario and brought this scenario to experts to say, would this work? Is this a typical way that this would actually be valuable? And they actually refined the design with the scenario. They had no hardware at this point, nothing. They were just talking about how it would be used. And the experts in augmentative and alternative communication and those in speech therapy could give feedback on this without necessarily even having to have anything physical present. So you can do that. And this really impacted even the design. So one last kind of goal for right now, last thing I want to say, just kind of know that role playing is not the same as, and so you can get some insight to that, but recognizing that that's not entirely, just because you pretend doesn't mean you totally understand what it's like to be for the user. Okay. Hold on one second. So for homework, I want you to find your project specifications. If you can't find them, I want you to talk about strategies for either developing them or because if maybe you're not at that part of your design phase. And then if you had any other design experience, how does this match? So again, this could either go in your physical notebook or it can go in your OneNote notebook. Okay, just respond to it. So you should have those questions. Okay. So for attendance, your name, ID, and true for number 1. Okay, give it to either Alan. Alan, where are you? Alan's over there. I'll run up to the other corner and hand it in to us individually.